Well, hi, everyone. Welcome here. So I'm Sandra Lupien. I'm the director of the program MassTimber at MSU, and I'm going to be moderating a conversation today with these guys. We're going to talk about training the MassTimber workforce of the future in Michigan, and I'm really excited to hear from them. MassTimber at MSU is a program at Michigan State University advancing mass timber construction and production through research, education and teaching, outreach, stakeholder engagement, partnerships, public policy, all these things, really in order to create a complete mass timber ecosystem in Michigan and also throughout the Great Lakes region and working beyond that as well. You're at the Tall Timber Exhibition. It's hosted by MassTimber at MSU, the Michigan Department of Natural Resources, and sponsored by Rossetti, Bedrock, the Chrisman Company, Chrisman Constructors. What do we call you now?
Northern Midwest Regional.
Northern Midwest Regional Council of Carpenters, formerly the Michigan Regional Council of Carpenters and Millwrights, and then Metro Signs and Lighting. Those are our sponsors. We thank them. This would not be possible without them. The exhibition will be here in downtown Detroit at 719 Griswold through March 4th. And there will be more events in the space between now and then. On the February 17th, we'll be talking about inspiring client action in mass timber. The 24th, mass timber reality solving for cost, constructability, and scale. And then we'll have an evening finale event, which is to be announced on March 4th. So that'll be our closing event. It's going to be good. So keep your eye out. So you can scan the QR code to get more information or visit this website. A couple of things coming up. I want to encourage people to register for the International Mass Timber Conference. There's a discount code on your screen if you're going to be participating as a person representing Michigan. The person working and living in Michigan. The QR code goes to the registration site. We'll be organizing some activities for our Michigan participants, a meetup. We're going to be having a meeting among Great Lakes mass timber stakeholders on April 2nd. So if you register, tell me so I can keep you in the loop about that. Consider joining the Michigan Mass Timber Community of Practice. This is a monthly, no, it's not, it is a quarterly virtual gathering of folks to provide technical assistance and peer learning to really help people succeed in whatever they're doing related to mass timber in Michigan. Next one coming up in April, date to be determined, but I think we're going to be talking about lignin-based adhesives and coatings and foams for mass timber applications with Dr. Mojgan Najad from MSU. And then I'm just very happy to announce that yesterday, the MassTimber MSU, Michigan Department of Natural Resources, Woodworks, and the Michigan Green Building Collaborative announced the awardees of the Michigan Mass Timber Catalyst Program. So these 9 projects that you see listed here will be receiving cash awards and a year of technical assistance to help them succeed in implementing mass timber in these projects. These projects are located all across the Lower Peninsula and all different types of projects, teaching facilities, public buildings, residences, institutional stuff. So all different kinds of projects. And then we are opening a supplemental funding round on Monday, February 9th, to try to get some proposals from the Upper Peninsula so that we can spread this benefit into the UP as well, which is always the intention of this. So keep an eye out for that information. And of course, the Sam Beauford Woodworking Institute represented here today is one of the awardees. So congratulations, and we're excited to work with you. Yay, applause. Okay, great. So I think it's time to get started. Our speakers here, our panelists are Steve Purchase from the many-worded Carpenters Union, George Berghorn, who I'm like previewing his slides for you accidentally, from the Construction Management Faculty at MSU, Research Director of MassTimber at MSU, and then Luke Barnett with the Sam Beauford Woodworking Institute. George is going to go first, and then it will be Steve, and then it will be Luke. And so I invite you guys to just come on up and take it away. Thank you so much.
Alrighty, good morning. So I understand the microphone is here in the laptop, so I'll be sort of stuck here. Normally I'm a little more of a wanderer when I talk, so I apologize. So I titled my presentation Framing the Future because this is really about the groundwork and sort of the genesis of the groundwork that we've started to lay at MSU with a glimpse forward toward some of the products that we're currently developing. And so I always like to begin with this image, because this is really what the initial inspiration for this project was as we kicked it off a couple of years ago. We can debate within the mass timber community where we are on this technology adoption cycle. Are we in the innovation stage, the early adopter stage? We're probably not in the early majority yet. So we can probably say we're still on the left side of the chasm, or depending on who you read, maybe the more aptly named chasm of death. And so the idea is, how do you innovate and move beyond that chasm? And as we looked around and looked at different models for how innovative building solutions have done that innovation, one of the things we started to notice was there must be some sort of an educational component that goes along with that early side of the innovation cycle and tech development cycle. So we just started taking a look at the availability of timber coursework at universities around the country. And you'll notice that 99% of the 175 universities we surveyed have steel coursework in construction and engineering. 100% had concrete coursework in construction and engineering. 33% had masonry, and 52% had timber. And we were kind of surprised. We said, wow, half of the schools out of 175 had timber coursework. So then we started digging in deeper. Out of that 52%, maybe 1 or 2% actually had coursework on mass timber. Many universities still have some older programming in their engineering schools predominantly, where maybe they do a module on heavy timber and beam sizing, something like that. So what we found was that there really is no mass timber curriculum, certainly not in an organized fashion across the country. At the same time, folks who teach in construction management programs, some architecture programs, and civil programs are also probably aware of the American Institute of Steel Constructors, who back in the early 2000s did a really good job as we started to realize that structural steel was not being taught in very many academic programs across the country. AISC built model curriculum that went out to universities across the nation. And we sort of knew that at MSU fundamentally because MSU was one of the developers of this curriculum. So if you actually go to that AISC website, pull down curriculum, you'll find all kinds of case study buildings from Lansing, Michigan. So we knew this. And sometimes you have to do these more introspective looks to say, well, we know there's a gap. We know there's some missing information, but we know that organizations like AISC have done a really good job of closing those gaps by making this information available to students. So that's kind of what launched the project. And as we launched, we started to learn some more things. One was that a trained mass timber AEC workforce is needed. Obviously, that's why we're here. And so one of the ways that we can demonstrate that we learned that or know that is, you can look at these papers that started in 2014, 2015, 18, 19, 20, talking about barriers to implementation of mass timber. If you look at what those barriers are that are listed across that time series, many of the barriers that were listed in 2014, 2015 were resolved by 2020, 2021, technical issues. The one issue that did not change was workforce training, workforce availability, still listed to this day as a significant barrier to getting more mass timber into our built environment. Some papers even cited that the lack of a skilled workforce is even a safety concern. So it's not just about availability of workforce, but do you have workforce that's operating in a safe manner or an effective or efficient manner? The second thing we learned as we went along was that you can look at those technical barriers from these different studies that are done. Forest Service does one every 3 years. We can look at technical barriers, and those technical barriers can help inform us what we need to focus on. So in our construction management field, we started to see things like this: cost performance, schedule performance, equipment utilization, code compliance. I mean, these aren't surprising, but they start to give us a way to frame the topics that we need to put some more focus around. And I want to focus on that last bullet because I'm going to talk mostly about that in the second half of this presentation: lack of coordination among project team members. We've been talking in construction management in our academic disciplines for years about more collaborative project delivery systems, whether it's design build, design assist, true IPD, whatever the case may be. And we tend to talk about them as these unique, special, sort of one-off sorts of things. When you get to mass timber, as those of you in the audience who are from industry who've developed mass timber projects know, you can't really talk about a successful mass timber project without also talking about an integrated and collaborative project delivery model. So we have some tension within my own home discipline where we talk about these things as unique, but within mass timber, they cannot be unique. Integrated project delivery cannot be a unique system. On the design side, we started to look at technical barriers like, technical performance, moisture management, getting improved code-approved diaphragm and shear wall designs, whole building life cycle assessments, and long-term energy performance. So we have the need, we have some technical ideas that we can focus on. So now the question is, what are faculty doing? What are professors doing around the country? Are they teaching this stuff? We know it's interesting. We know it's important. I was hearing, I mean, this is anecdotal, but I was hearing from more students than I could respond to that wanted to come to MSU to do a master's or a PhD on mass timber related topics. So there's sort of a student demand, but there seemed to be a little bit of or a lot of a dearth of information within the higher ed community. So we surveyed faculty across the country and we said, why are you not including mass timber curriculum or mass timber topics into your curriculum? Our faculty don't have the expertise. They don't know how to teach it. We don't have resources. Nobody has put a resource packet together like AISC to help us do this. We don't even know if resources are available. And we don't know how to translate those resources into teaching, into a teachable framework. Some comments from those faculty: wood design, even at the most basic level, must be elevated to the same importance as steel and reinforced concrete from a construction management professor. We spend a lot of time in accredited CM programs around the country talking about design of steel and concrete structures. We spend a lot of time talking about that. As a side note, it always interested me so I practiced in the construction profession. I was a super and a project manager before I came back to higher ed. I didn't have a CM degree before I started working in the construction field. I got into higher ed and I started finding out that we're making CM students take steel and concrete design classes. And I got really scared for a minute because I thought, as a former CM, as a former super, no one should ever ask me to design a steel or a concrete building. That'd be a horrible idea. But we subject our students to this. So we're focusing steel and concrete. Construction engineering professor from Utah. We definitely need some help if possible, such as virtual lectures about structural systems, needed lab tests such as fire. And then another CM professor from Michigan. This is a needed area in CM. Okay, so there's a gap. There's technical things we should focus on, and faculty are saying we need help. So what do? We start to design a project to look at how to put those pieces together and build the framework for a curriculum. This is like an overly academic slide that I won't bore you with, but the middle part of the process of what we did is important. It's this thing called a DACUM, designing a curriculum. This is where we impanel industry experts and we say, okay, if you're going to hire a new structural engineer, assistant project manager, project engineer, junior architect, and you're going to put them to work on a mass timber project, what do you need them to know the day they show up for their first day of work so they can hit the ground running? So we ran 3 panels, CM, architecture, structural engineering. We're about to run a 4th with installers on February 18th. But these 3 panels that we ran, here we go, came up with these, what they call task and duty matrices. I used to have a picture of one of those in here, but it's a bit of an eye chart, so it's really almost impossible to understand on a slide. But really what we do is we say, okay, what are big duties? So a duty would be like, participate in the pre-construction process, big bucket. So what are the duties that you expect these folks to do? And then what are the tasks, specific tasks that you expect them to be able to do under each of those duties? So architects came up with 86 of those competencies. CMs came up with 43. Structural engineers came up with 44. So it's a lot of information sort of going into a grinder. It gets, ground up, organized, put out the back end as the things that we need to focus on for a curriculum. So without going through the 100 and whatever of those that are there, these are the 6 things that really stood out to us. More so than normal AEC job competencies, normal, concrete and steel, traditional, conventional. From a technical side, all panels agreed there's far more focus on sustainability. Students have to have more base knowledge about sustainability, what goes into that. They need to have more fluency in talking about carbon, more so than what we ordinarily might expect. They really need to have a better understanding of the manufacturing and fabrication process. Again, having built steel buildings before, it really wasn't that important to me, other than to understand what went into the detailing process when I would send steel to a fabricator. I didn't really have to understand much more about that process, but we need to know more about manufacturing and fab. And we need to have students that know more about building materials performance in general. On the non-technical side, behavioral competency side, we need students who are prepped to have more competency around team behaviors, good team behaviors, because again, collaborative process. Communications kept coming up time and time again. And then of course, no surprise, students need to have more facility with integrative and collaborative processes. And so that's what I'm going to now focus on. So this is an eye chart. I apologize. All this is all 3 panels combined on the upper left, and then the 3 individual panels the rest of the way. These are sort of the big topical areas that they focused on. And what we were looking for is where is their alignment across the 3 panels? And where we found alignment was on things like BIM coordination, estimating, technical knowledge, and knowledge of building codes. Sort of everybody across the disciplines agreed these are the core competencies that their students or their new hires need to have coming out of their academic program. And just as an example of what those mean, so like a BIM-enabled coordination competency could look like being able to do your CLT installation sequencing and clash detection review with MassTimber. On the estimating and planning side, it could mean doing things like timber quantities and scheduling, but also looking at the logistics of how you're bringing timber to your site, making a manufacturer selection who's going to provide your MassTimber based on logistics considerations, based on cost and material cost and availability. On the codes and standards side, of course, that could mean things like fire resistance detailing. And then on the technical knowledge side, understanding of panel tolerances and connection detailing. So this is some work that was done by one of my current PhD students, putting together a framework for what an integrated capstone course for students in CM, engineering, and architecture programs could take together. So he's focusing on how do we get students from the 3 disciplinary focus areas to work together in a single capstone class. So before they leave to go into their professions, they've kind of walked through an actual MassTimber project, playing their roles, taking the things that they're responsible for, and doing it in the safety of a classroom environment. So up top, these are shared core modules. So basically all students would take modules in BIM-enabled coordination, estimating and planning logic, code, sustainability, and technical foundations. Then they would go through a collaboration and coordination filter where the architects, engineers, and CMs would focus on their sort of very strict disciplinary competencies. And then they would go into this workflow where their capstone would focus on delivering a project. So they'd focus on things like model coordination. How do you get your architectural model and your structural model coordinated and talking to the players on all sides of that? How do you start to build your construction sequence and your estimate, getting into a constructability review process, and then your code compliance narrative. The idea here is that students from all 3 disciplines have a role to play in all 4 of those areas across the bottom. So some pilot products that we've produced, we've developed a virtual learning environment, which is based on the MSU STEM building. So basically students who don't have access to a MassTimber building on their campus or in close proximity to where they are could actually put on the headset and experience this building. And you see the icons, the informational targets sort of scattered around the building. This is a class that we're now teaching for the second time this semester. One of the students, Ryan, is here from this class, Mass Timber Construction Products, Process and Performance. So this is basically built on topics that came out of this DACM process, this industry-driven competency process. So you can see the big bucket topics that we talk about in the class. And we recently just got approval to develop an online textbook, also called an open educational resource. There's 2 new textbooks that have just come out on Mass Timber, one from Peggy Clouston and one from Anthony Mirando at Kent State. And they seem like really good textbooks. I've gotten copies of both of them. This is more focused on getting information into the hands of students at no cost. So open educational resource, meaning they can access it at no cost through the web. So we received a development grant at MSU to do this, and MSU hosts the product, et cetera. So that's coming by the end of this year. So just a quick nod to some of our contributors and partners on this project who've been funders or knowledge partners. And then just an acknowledgement to the faculty side of our team, and then the student and alumni side of our team. So it's a big lift to get to these places, and obviously it takes a lot of folks doing a lot of work even to get to this point, because that's a 20-minute summation of a couple of hours worth of work leading into it. So there's my contact information. Obviously I'll be here. We can talk here too, but you can reach me by email if you'd like to talk more. Thanks, guys. Okay.
Just thinking maybe the next, because you're maybe taller than me, and I set this for myself.
Yes. Okay, is that set? Can you see my face? Oh, you know what? Let's double check that. There we go. Yep, that's great. Okay. Excellent. Okay, so my name is Steve Purchase. I am the communications director for what was until a month ago exactly, the Michigan Regional Council of Carpenters and Millwrights. And what happened a month ago is we we expanded into 4 new states. So we now represent more than 36,000 carpenters, millwrights, floor layers across Michigan, Minnesota, Wisconsin, North Dakota, and South Dakota. We're really proud to be here. We're proud to be sponsors of this tall timber exhibit. But we're really even more proud of the work our members do and our instructors do and our business reps do every day to build a sustainable workforce who can deliver projects on time, on schedule, safely, and with the quality that, the investments, the massive level of investments that construction projects require deserve. And so you can see our states here. And I wanted to point out, we have something like 21 training centers across our territory that deliver training to apprentices on a daily basis. And that includes 5 right here in Michigan and 1 that is right here in the city of Detroit. Over the last 7 years, we invested about $60 million to build 3 brand new training centers across Michigan. It was a point of pride that those include mass timber elements as well. So if there's one thing we know training. For whatever preconceptions folks have about unions, one of the things I'm really proud of the United Brotherhood of Carpenters is we understand that if we want to fight for higher wages, better benefits, better working conditions, and especially in our industry, safety, carpenters have to be worth more. And the way you make carpenters worth more is you make them the finest trained, skilled workforce that there is. And so we invest heavily in our apprenticeship training program. And I would be remiss if I didn't also include a shout out to our contractor partners. None of this happens without them. The model for our apprenticeship is very much a hand-in-hand collaboration between the union and our contractor partners to make sure that that learning happens. And I was, invited here, and we're going to talk about how we do training and some of the things we do. But I was encouraged listening to George and thinking about that chasm of death that he talked about, because in thinking about the development of the mass timber industry, one of the big challenges for the development of a workforce is, how do you have something sustained when there are kind of staccato projects years apart as people build the momentum? When there's not a project going at all times, how do you have that sustainability among the trained workforce? And I think our answer is we start with the fundamentals in training a workforce that can deliver all aspects of construction. We like to say carpenters are involved from the foundation of a building to the finish of a building. And so it starts in classrooms, learning the fundamentals. It continues into our hands-on training areas where carpenters develop the hand skills. And crucially, also on the job sites, learning from those who came before what works in practical reality on a construction site. This is an interesting industry, and there's so much academic focus on mass timber. How does that translate to when you actually have to have hands and tools on material in the field? And so that all of that process is represented with our instructors and our apprentices and our journey level carpenters. That creates that well-rounded workforce that's capable of sustaining themselves whatever direction the market takes. And that's going to be really important to have that foundation as we build capacity for mass timber. There's something else I want to talk about, and I think George alluded to this too. There's a weird timer on this slide, I think, but we have an international training center in Las Vegas that has over 1.5 million square feet under roof. And a lot of it is hotel and conference space. And it's a place where we send our rank and file carpenters to learn the soft skills, the leadership capacity, the coordination between the different elements on a construction site. We have a course that and normally courses out there are open to union members, but we have one course called Collaborative Leadership where we invite construction managers, safety personnel, architects, engineers, anyone who's involved in the delivery of a project to talk about that integrated approach of how you come together as a team to deliver that project. And that, to me, is even more crucial in mass timber delivery, right? If you go to the Mass Timber Conference, you'll hear a lot about, from the earliest inception of a project, the importance of involving everyone from the mass timber producer to the installer, because that's how you're going to drive the efficiency on a job site that makes a mass timber project pencil. And we're about that. It requires from day one, from training, that coordinated approach, right? And of course, we also use that facility in Vegas to teach hand skills as well. And so we, in partnership with Woodworks, have a fantastic mass timber training element out there. And it's used more than anything else to train the trainer, right? If we have 21 apprenticeship training schools across these 4 states, and there are dozens and dozens more across the country, and other trades who are involved in mass timber and in construction have the same. It's important that our instructors are kept abreast of the most up-to-date technologies and tools and practices. And so we do that with our instructors in Las Vegas at our International Training Center. And that's something too, I think that's important for the mass timber industry to think about, right? We have a certain capacity for a certain number of projects in Michigan. How can we cross-pollinate that expertise across a wider area so that it can show up where it's needed, right? So that's a big tool that we have in our toolbox with the International Training Center. And of course, we bring that right back here. So this is in Detroit, in partnership with Chrisman Construction, running hands-on member training with a crew that had a project that was coming up to deliver timely, relevant training ahead of that particular project. And so we have the capacity working with mass timber producers, working with hardware producers to say, okay, what connections are you going to be working with on that next project? And what do we have to do to provide that training up front so you can make the mistakes on our material and not on the material that has to last in a building that's going to be open to public, right? And so I think that's a critical part of the learning process. As much as we rely on journey carpenters to transmit their skills to apprentices in the field, centers of training like this, like what MSU has, like what others have, are an important place to make those mistakes and figure out the most efficient process. I want to show this, and everyone in this room is familiar with the building at MSU, the STEM building. But what I like about this picture and what I think it illustrates about mass timber uniquely is it's one of the rare materials that has some delicacy to it, right? But it's there very early on a construction site, and it's intended to be a finished product, right? And that takes a different level of both coordination and approach to the hand skills to make sure that the value of the material, all of the biophilic properties, all of the architectural properties are preserved through what can be a chaotic, messy, dirty process of construction. And so that's something I think carpenters are very well adept at, given our involvement from foundation to finish in buildings. I want to highlight Kinsall Timber Systems, and I think this is a valuable case study in workforce development. Kinsall is a contractor not based in Michigan, and they came to Michigan to build Adelaide Point in Muskegon, a mass timber project out there. And so when they came into the state, they were tasked with finding the skilled workforce to put the project together. And what they did was I'm glad they came to us, they came to the Carpenters, and we went to work to identify those members who already had that base level of skill to help put that crew together. And again, I think that illustrates the collaboration of it. There's another piece though too in workforce development, and that has to be connecting people to the jobs. So one of the things we've put a lot of intentional thought behind is the hiring process for construction professionals. And for a long time, what you'd do is you'd show up at in a gymnasium somewhere, and you'd shake a hand with a construction manager across a table, and you try and convince them, I've got what it takes to be a great carpenter or floor layer or operator or iron worker, or whatever the case may be. We said, we think we could do better. So we took a page out of the playbook of the NFL, and we said, let's do like a combine style event, right? Where folks can show up and they can show that they have some of the physical ability to do the job, and they can demonstrate to contractor partners that they've got the hustle and they've got the attitude and they've got the spatial awareness, all the kind of innate traits that can be developed and honed with training to do that. And we've since taken that model and we've developed particular courses for solar, so we could take it to a solar site, and we could do the same thing with mass timber, right? With some of the elements, working with the connections, working with the longer screws that you have to work with to make sure that from the hiring process, we're looking for the folks who can do the work. And if you'll indulge me, I just want to take a second too, because I think when we talk about training, we also take seriously the responsibility to train the public. And that's a big part of workforce development. So we have a program called Schools to Tools that brings virtual reality and hands-on experiences to schools all across the state of Michigan. It's a fantastic program. We've got a waiting list longer than the number of days in a school year. Kids absolutely go nuts for it. One of the things we were really intentional about is making mass timber a part of that story, making solar a part of that story. So as we think about the workforce and we think about who's going to next enter the workforce, we can connect with the people who have the values that are aligned with the mass timber industry, and we can excite that curiosity and that passion and inspire them to go to a fine place like MSU and learn how to be a construction manager, to join an apprenticeship program and work with the material in their hands-on. And I think that's really important. We do the same thing every day in our training centers with policymakers and with building owners and everything else, right? We need to train everybody to understand what mass timber is, what the benefits are, and what the future potential of the industry is. And so we take that responsibility seriously as well. That's the only way we're going to ever cross that chasm and build that mass adoption of acceptability for mass timber that will really make it take off, and give the workforce an opportunity to do nothing but build mass timber. And you can imagine there are carpenters who started their career wood framing, wishing that they could get back to that. And mass timber is a fantastic opportunity for that. So I want to thank you for the time. A little bit less technical than George, but we work with skilled trades professionals every day in the field, and we love what we do. And we're, again, just very proud to support this industry and this effort. Thank you.
I'm gonna make sure the camera's at the right height for you too.
Okay.
So stand here. Okay, it looks good. I'm gonna get rid of this now. Excellent. Take it away.
All right. Clickers here.
Yeah, the big one.
This will be the least technical presentation. So my name is Luke Barnett, and I am a carpenter that turned into an educator. And now, oddly enough, I'm the president of an accredited post-secondary trade school located in Adrian, Michigan. So a little bit about SBWI. So we started in 2017, and we started with 5-day continuing education classes that were focused on my skill set and friends who had earned a reputation like myself, recognized throughout the world, and started bringing them in and started teaching 5-day continuing education courses. And around 2018, a local legislator came to us. Her name was Brana Kali, and said, Luke, in the woodworking industry, there is a desperate need for people who want to do this as a career and for a long-term training program. Would you be willing to do it? And we said, yeah, let's look into it. So we got with the Architectural Woodworking Institute and the Woodworking Career Alliance of North America and started developing programs in addition to our continuing ed stuff. And in 2020, we launched our first full year program. A horrible time to launch a program, but we did it. It is what it is. And our first graduating class had 7, and that was in 2021. And now, and as we're in 2026, we're accepting applications for our class of 2027 graduating class, and we have 250 applicants, and we'll only be able to take 24. Sorry, my notes are in my text. So, one of the things that we see is that although the tides are certainly shifting, the pendulum is swinging in our way, there is still a significant stigma about skilled trades and becoming a carpenter. Parents, for some reason, don't look at carpenters as a prestigious job, right? So most parents will say, if my kid's really smart, they're going to go on to be a doctor, or they're going to be an engineer. And you don't hear parents say, my kid's really smart, he's going to go on to be a carpenter. And that's what we want to change that. And frankly, if you look at Maslow's hierarchy of need, the foundation of that is food, water, and shelter. No other needs can be met until those basic needs are met. Those are provided by carpenters, farmers, and plumbers. And somehow we've been convinced that's alternative education, and it's absolutely wrong. So we operate in two separate ways, as I said, a year-long, fully accredited trade school recognized by the U.S. Department of Education. We became accredited in August of 2024. And basically what that means is students have access to federal student aid, all the traditional funding models that they would as going to a college. And we still have a very strong continuing education component. In fact, in the summer times when the college students aren't there, we're pretty much running 2, 3, 4 classes a week. This is a kind of example of what our students look like in the courses. This is last year's class. So we're bringing in younger people. That's our goal, is younger people who want to go into this professionally. And to show you some of the stuff we do in our continuing education class. So this is a timber frame. Actually, this was also in partnership with MSU. This is at the Hidden Lake Gardens, which is an MSU owned facility. And they built a sky bridge there, pre-golf construction, Union Carpentry Place. And they asked us if our students would like to build the entrance to it. So we put a class together and we built this in 6 days. People who have never done timber framing at all. Showed them how to cut the joints. This is all traditional mortise and tenon timber framing. Beautiful, you know, it's great. It's still there. I was just there a month ago. Looks amazing. So a lot of safety violations here, but it's a really cool picture. And so I had to put it in there. But, you know, what I want to show is like, you know, look how happy everybody is. And this is what we're doing, is that everybody's so happy. By the way, I wasn't there when they did this. So here's another really cool project we did in Virginia. We took a bunch of students down, and it's a spiral king post truss. So an engineer took a class with me. His name's Greg Mullen. And I had like a little sculpture thing that I made and it was twisted. And he looked at it and he goes, "Luke, do you think you could put that into a timber frame?" And I'm like, "Absolutely, I can do anything." And so we took a bunch of students down. They sent me the plans. And like when I got the plans, I was like, "Oh God, what did I agree to?" And figured out how to twist the spiral king post truss. And there's a straight 8x8 in there. So this meets all engineering requirements. Tensile requirements, a lot of different connections. So pretty cool little thing. This is like the group that we had working on it. There it is going for assembly. You know, I don't know if anybody's familiar with this practice, but this is called the wedding bush. And in traditional timber framing, what you'll do is at the end of a raising, the youngest person on the crew will go up and actually put a piece of coniferous wood up there to represent that it was a safe and successful raising. And I've also heard, I don't know how true this is, that the French, if it was a bad customer, they would hang wine bottles up there to tell all the other groups, compagnon groups that were there, that this is a bad customer and you shouldn't work for them anymore. So here's another really cool project we did. So in 2019, Notre Dame Cathedral burned, and there was a group called Hands House Studio in the United States and a group in France called Carpenters Without Borders. In 2019, or you know, shortly after that, they were saying like, "Hey, we want to rebuild this with modern construction techniques because people don't have the skills." And we all heard the rumor that they were like, "We don't have the wood anymore." So those two groups got together and said, "We're going to prove to you that people still have the skills." And so this is the choir section, an exact replica. The French government let the architect provide us with the plans that he had drew. And so this is an exact replica. Every 1/10 scale, every truss is different. Pretty cool. I mean, as far as like, it doesn't meet all the modern engineering requirements, but they just went with it anyway. They changed like some housing things to make it meet for block shear failure and whatnot. And so this is a fun picture that I can show you guys. So they put this up, and this is the spire, and I climbed up there and put that American flag up there, and then we got a call that said, "Take that down." And so this is a full-size truss. This is choir truss number 6 that we did at the same time. And we actually raised this the day that we were doing that scale. This is exactly from the plans, white oak construction, all hand-hewn lumber. And you know, what we did was just an old-fashioned hand raising. And it was a great community event. We did this in Adrian in 2023. We also did the same exact project in downtown Ann Arbor. That was crazy, but we pulled it off. Yep, and so here's some more examples of our students. I'm gonna go back to my script here. So, you know, I had seen some really cool stuff about MassTimber online, and I think I just cold called Sandra one day, probably 3 or 4 years ago, and said, "Hey, I'm interested in this. Can we come up and check it out?" And Sandra said, "Yeah, come on up." She gave us a tour, and I loved it. You know, we love wood, and as I'm looking around looking at this stuff, I'm realizing like this is exactly what we do already. It is heavy timber construction. It's just a little bit bigger. Which got me thinking, maybe we could be a resource for training the next generation of carpenters or installers. I'll talk about that in a minute, but carpenters who are going to put this stuff up. So talk to Sandra some more, and yeah, it went really great. I think so. The Carpenters Union is an amazing career path. They do a lot of training, but I think where we fit in for those people who are like not quite ready to commit to having a year or to becoming a carpenter and joining the union, right? It's very intimidating. And what we can do is kind of bring these people in who are on the fence and cultivate them by basically showing them that this is an elevated trade. It is worthy of the highest respect and honor. And in the end, they come out feeling very, very confident and also having an absolute love and passion for installing wood and wood products. Okay. Yeah, that's one of the main challenges we see, is that students are still on the fence about going into the trades and carpentry specifically because of the stigma that's been built around it, that it's somehow a lesser job. And so, you know, and a perfect example of this is like why we exist, and it was on the slides here today, is that when the people who are going to actually build this product were referred to as installers, that language should be changed. Let me tell you, there is no little kid in the world that says, "I want to grow up to become an installer." Okay, they'll say, "I want to grow up to become a carpenter." So it's like little things like that that we can do to really elevate the level of respect and dignity for this craft. Okay. So our program, we currently have a year-long furniture program. That's our college program. And as I said, we're turning away 9 people to every one that comes. And realizing this fact, if there is all these extra people who want to get into skilled trades and there is such a crisis for skilled tradespeople, we certainly should not be turning people away. So we made a plan. We have to increase our capacity. This is our current operations. It's about 3,700 square feet. We take 24 students through our year-long program, and about 500 students will go through continuing education classes every year. Not enough room to meet the capacity. So we came up with a plan. Well, what can we do? We want to open up opportunities for more people, and we also want to elevate the level of respect and dignity. And what we need to do is create the college-like atmosphere, but dedicated towards the skilled trades. So, you know, everybody in here, most of you have always been to college, and, you know, I'm going to ask you to close your eyes. Do not share. What is your favorite memory from college? Okay. Do not share, please. That is the exact reason why kids choose college over trade school, okay? But what if we can mirror that opportunity and that experience, but do it for trade schools. That will elevate it. And so some of the things are building a campus, you know, that people can walk through, just like Michigan State University. You know, clear, beautiful buildings with clear, walkable paths, and really just a space where we can cultivate a culture that students really feel comfortable and feel rewarded that they got their college experience while going to trade school. So this is, this slide's out of order, but that's okay. This is, so we purchased some land and we made a plan, and this is where our new building is going to go in Adrian. You'll notice that there's 3 wings on it. One of the wings is going to be our furniture making program. One is going to be a timber framing and mass timber year-long program. So we're combining those things together. And then the other one is going to be a historical preservation program. And bringing these like 3 specialties together, it's all carpentry work, but they all will have a specialty, and like let them coalesce and mingle together and talk about what they worked on. That is the culture that we need to create to get more people interested for the next 2 centuries. Okay. So knowing that we wanted to grow this program and increase the capacity, we knew that proper planning was in order. So we reached out to an architect, several architects actually, and they went through a process. We you know, put out an RFP. They all came to us with presentations, and this was the architecture team that we decided on, the collaborative, who has their expertise is in higher education. They've also done a lot of higher education work in our area. And these are the renderings that they came up with for this training facility. And you'll notice it's very beautiful. So some of the things that were important to us, we want it to be in a rural area. We want it to be in the woods. We wanted to have some kind of water feature. And the building had to be made out of wood. It has to be like a living and breathing classroom. So they came up with these. Here's the front entrance, super cool. Inside, lots of mass timber. Classroom area. You'll notice there's a lot of windows here, and we're trying to connect the indoors with the outdoors. What we find is that most carpenters are very, very interested in the outdoors, and we want to connect those things. Our current building is very connected to the outdoors as well. So having as many windows as possible, we'll pay the heat bill, whatever. We got to set the right vibe for everybody. So knowing that we wanted to do this, the architects said this is going to cost $16.5 million. And so, okay, great. We're going to start raising money. And actually, as of November of last year, we officially raised the full $16.5 million to make this happen. We're moving forward very quickly. And then once we knew that was going to happen, we were like, okay, well, we need to pull in some experts to help us make sure that these programs are as good as possible. So, you know, using my relationship with Sandra introduced me to George, and I called George again, just out of nowhere. And George, to my surprise, incredibly enthusiastic, said, yeah, come on up here. Let's talk about it. We went out to lunch, and it was set. It was like in 45 minutes, it was set and it was done. And we were super happy. Steve came on board to help us develop this, which I was super excited about too. And, you know, this is like an opportunity for everybody to get together, all the stakeholders, and develop the program that they think is going to be most effective. We are lucky because we don't have the administrative red tape that MSU would have and that George and Sandra have to deal with. I am literally the decision maker. So, you know, we do have a board, but they pretty much like let me do whatever I want, which is nice. So yeah, that's okay. They know it. Yeah, so bringing in all these stakeholders, a great opportunity to build a program. And so our next meeting our first meeting is on February 18th. We've got some very great people coming to this, like legendary timber framers. Michigan Carpenters Union is coming. Also, the Chicago Carpenters Union, which is called
Mid-America.
Mid-America Carpenters Union. They have a great mass timber training facility as well. And, you know, lots of people, and we're really looking forward to building this program out. So this is our construction schedule for when our goals for when this is going to get done. We're looking to break ground in late March, and the building should be done in July of 2027, which means our year-long college programs can start the last week of August in 2027. And that is our goal. We are aggressively moving towards that. We recently hired our construction manager, which is Krieghoff of Lenawee, which is a union construction company. They've been great to deal with. You know, some of the challenges that we've had to deal with is like the collaborative has never dealt with mass timber. Our structural engineer never dealt with mass timber. Krieghoff never dealt with mass timber. So, you know, bringing everybody in and trying to get them aligned and convince them this is what we want to do has been a real challenge. The Mass Timber Catalyst Fund, you know, that we were awarded a couple of days ago, very grateful for that. That is really going to help us through the technical assistance, and is going to be key to get for Krieghoff being carpenters, not installers, and you know, get everybody on board and on the same path when none of them have any experience. And then the great thing about this is that this investment pays dividends down the road, because then they're going to have experience and feel more comfortable doing this in the future. Okay, that's all I have.
Luke Barnett, not messing around, getting things done. Very exciting. Thank you. So if you've been watching this as a recording, thank you so much for joining this panel discussion on developing the Michigan Mass Timber Workforce of the Future, hosted by MassTimber MSU in the site of the Tall Timber, the Future of Cities in Wood exhibition in downtown Detroit.